Hey, we're live. We'll start to get all our subscribers are going to be notified. It's so exciting. Sunday night, we'll get things going. Hey, Wilhelmina, Willie's here, our sidekick. Great.
Yes, Willie, my sidekick, is here. I'm very excited that she is here tonight.
Yeah, let's start this up. But I was going to tell you, I have my glasses on tonight because right before I left for my trip, it's getting ready in the bathroom. My blow dryer hit my contact case. My contact case hit the middle of the sink. My contact went flying, whoop, right down the drain. That was me. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm excited. I see Susan has joined. Great to see her in the room. And I know that we've been trying to do this every night at 7 p.m. And what's really funny is that I think we're getting into the groove of things we want to talk about.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. So why don't you get things started tonight and then
sure,
what
sure,
we'll talk about.
sure. Well, I thought it would be really interesting tonight to have a conversation about some of the things that I've been thinking about. And one of the things that I wrote about that I've been thinking about, we talked about it last week a little bit. I was reading the book, The Look, by Michelle Obama, and I had seen it on TV, but I hadn't opened the book yet. It's
Right.
the most beautiful book you've ever seen in terms of pictures. But when I was watching it on TV, they said, be sure not to just flip through and look at the pictures, be sure to read the words that she actually says. And so I started to read the book. And it started me sort of having these flashbacks of what the administration was like. And as I said, as I've written, when I was one of the Black women who said when their term was coming to a close, how excited I was about that. And not because I didn't love them and think that they were fantastic, but because the vitriol was so horrible that I just wanted it to be over. And I wanted to give an example of what I mean by what President Obama did and what we're seeing now in this administration. So let's just go past the tan suit and get right to when Professor Gates, you remember that episode, Professor Gates was going into his home and a
Right.
neighbor called the police. And the police came and there was this big thing that happened with Professor Gates trying to get into his own home in a neighborhood that was a predominantly white neighborhood. And because he's so famous, it was on the news. And President Obama at the time said that the police acted foolishly. Those were his words. The police acted foolishly. And if you remember, there had to be this whole big thing. Joe Biden, the police officer, they all got together and had a beer and blah, blah, blah. And
Porch
it
of the
was
White House, right? Yeah.
exactly was this whole big thing because he said the police acted stupidly.
Right.
And then now fast forward to this administration, to all the things that are happening. And I just thought to myself, in this one instance, when he was president, he said the words, the police acted foolishly, and the Republicans went ballistic. And then just think about what happened January 6th, think about what we're seeing now. And that is where we've come from. And so I just think as you sort of watch some of these things happen, you sort of start to think about what those 8 years were like for us watching, being proud sometimes, and what they were like and what they must have been like for Michelle Obama as she talks about this book and how she came about to have the freedom to actually write this book today.
Well, let me ask you a question. And as a Black woman, obviously, and then, like you said, it's what I think is really good for all people is this is having a Black friend is the best thing you could do. And I mean that sincerely. I think it's the biggest gift in my life later in life is to have a friend that I can be empathetic. I didn't think about that then. I think about it a lot now because right now with the attack on DEI or what do you want to call it, these gross things where we see a really full on attack on diversity, equality, and inclusion. You see the Vice President, JD Vance, on the Turning Point USA the other day talking about we don't have to apologize for being white anymore. And I was like, that is so, first of all, it is embarrassing for the whole world. It's disgusting. It's racist. It's more than a dog whistle. So when you talk about that book and how important I think historically it is, if we had an East Wing, by the way, that the president demolished, I mean, and this is why history is so important. But that book, The Look, is going to be something read in 100 years from now, and possibly, you know, document what's happening. But so even now, when we talk about this book now, how is it being a Black person, a Black woman, to see what your government is doing, what the president of the United States is doing? For me, I'm like, gosh, have we even evolved from this point, right? Like every day, it's an insult.
Yeah, I just started writing more, and I sort of felt like I was leaning into this place of, how I felt as a Black woman,
Right.
the way that I grew up, and the way that I feel about things, and just the way that I see things. And so when I was reading that book, what it got me to thinking about was what I often talk about, what is, for the problems that ail us today,
Yeah.
what is really the root cause of what is ailing us today? And I come back to race. I come back to, we have this man who is president. We could have had Vice President Kamala Harris, and we don't have her. And the question that you have to ask yourself is, why don't we have her? And what I started to think about was, we think about the Republican Party,
Right.
MAGA party, but whatever it is, but it's been happening for generations in terms of how they talk about race. And that's what I started thinking about, the race class narrative that is supposed to be our answer to all of the dog whistles and all of the things that they do to win elections. And I just started thinking, is it enough? Is the conversation that we have as people who are common sense people, progressive people, liberal, I don't really care what you call it, because I just say at this point it's about humanity and being decent and being moral
Right.
and just doing right things. My question is the race class narrative enough to fight against what they use to really get a lot of people together, use fear? Is the conversations that we're having about what ails us as a country today, is it the right conversation? And so when I think about it, I think, okay, so we're talking about the price of eggs, and we're talking about affordability, and we're talking about this so that we can get other people to pay attention. But the question that you have to ask yourself is, why didn't they pay attention the first time? And
Right.
so the first time, what caused them to know all of these things that were happening, but they just said, "Yeah, no, nope, I'm gonna vote for this man because I don't care what I've seen him do. He's the one who is going to deliver us." And the question was he ever gonna deliver anybody? Was there something else underneath that was driving people to vote for this man who is dragging our country into the ground?
I mean, it's a question that we have been talking about since January 27th with Miss Margaret. I think that was the first power lunch that we really dug into this question with Miss Margaret, who is our frequent guest on the power lunch. And I shared those two posts today because I think all week I've been thinking about what this particular subject, what we see is this racism and greed and the two sins that America we talk about have not grappled with. It really got me to think about what Miss Margaret had said and known her whole life also now as a older Black woman who's experienced racism, walked the Pettus Bridge, right, in Selma. And she said it, it's not the price of eggs, straight out. She's just sitting there going, I hear all you people. I hear what you're talking about. Eggs cost the same for me as they do for you, and I'm just gonna tell you right now, I hate to make you uncomfortable. This was everything to do with race, and I think those 2 documented that we went all the way back to that, that date, and I think we both feel that we're being gaslit right now by our own party even, and other people, pundits, these people that will tell us that do all this research or whatever they are to say no, no, no. We have to talk about the economy. It's affordability, which I think you could take it from there. We got to do both, right?
Yeah, I do, and I do think that it is. uh,
Yeah.
Everybody will know this. I see Robin is here today.
I see what
Hi, Robin.
Billy.
I know that we always say it is never or,
Right.
it is and so I think that both conversations are worthy of having and must be had. And so, when I was thinking about all of this, I kept thinking, everybody says, "Oh, well, you really have to talk to people, and you can't be preachy to them. You really have to talk about blah blah blah." And I was just like, "Well, let me just say this: if the house is on fire, do you want me to give you a whole conversation and engage you about the house being on fire, or do you want me just to tell you why you need to get out?" And that's what I was thinking about in this whole thing when people
Right.
go, "Oh, nobody votes against their interests." Well, yeah, they do, because sometimes we are confused about what their interests are. But if we never get to the root cause of why people are voting this way, and we are never bold enough to say what it is,
Right.
to say, "We see you. This is what's ripping our country apart. Let's put this on the table and talk about how you are being gaslit by the Republican Party, who has never done anything worthwhile to rural America, has never done anything worthwhile for poor people, has never done anything worthwhile for women.
Right.
And yet and still, we look at the Republican Party and we look at the president we have and this administration of crazy people,
Yeah.
and people are still
Lunatic.
okay.
Well, it's actually worse than I've ever seen, and I think this again, a lot of thinking, and you've been posting a lot, and this week for people in the room, first, subscribe and share our work. Vanel has been posting some great articles because I think I think the unsettling feeling is where we're headed because of what we see it so out loud by JD Vance, especially who's supposed to be the vice president, probably the next in line. To me, he's more dangerous. The MAGA movement is kind of evolving and really going out there, creating more of a cult of white supremacy. And I think there is all that we have to confront, and then we have to talk about things we can do. Because in red states, they're having civic, in every state, they've been holding these kind of civic meetings, talking about you know, they're creating things on college campuses where they're actually talking about culture, about voting, about different issues, and blue states have to do the same thing. So we can't just always sit in reaction. Heather Cox Richardson talked about this the other day, and I posted about this. When we have to create our own narrative and write the script, we cannot get in. We sometimes are always kind of following this kind of crazy spinning the Republicans are doing. And right around Christmas time, Heather Cox Richardson posted, which really sat with me about, you know what? I'm not going to talk about Donald Trump anymore. I am going to talk about us and what we're doing. I'm going to talk more about what the world we want to create is where we need to go. But let's circle back to what we talked about that the left hook, if you guys follow it, anybody here watch Wajahat Ali and Eddie Claude had a really good post, a really good conversation about race. And they talked about racism, greed, and greed are the most two enduring sins in America that we're unwilling to confront, and we will not be able to move forward until we do. And I think that we have to, like you said, we have to really I think it's time. We have to do it now, or we're gonna slip again into another 60 years of darkness.
Yeah, I listened to that, after you shared it with me, which I
Yeah,
had not
talking
seen
about
any of
Ali.
that. Yeah, I hadn't seen any of that before I was writing about what was really bothering me and what was on my mind, and there were a couple of things, and Heather, I'm not a historian, I'm not a history buff, I'm doing my best to learn history, I just know
Mhm.
what I feel and what I see, and then I go back and grab things that I feel meet the moment of what I'm talking about. But I think that we should never, ever stop talking about Trump. We should never, ever stop talking about Trump. We should never, ever stop talking about JD Vance or the Secretary of War, or any of those folks, because they are monsters. And we have to always know who the monsters are and what they're doing. And
Yep.
so I think we never, ever, because when you stop talking about them, it's not reminding people of
Oh,
who
right,
they are and what they are doing. And we can do that and we can still talk about the future that we want. But what I believe is that we are supposed to be a big tent party, and as a big tent party, you can't just have one message and one narrative, because
right,
at that point, you're not hitting all the people. We are all moved by different kinds of things, and so the Republicans have figured out that fear is what they move to persuade people. Well, I'm
right,
scared too, and you can move me with fear. I'm not gonna be moved by, everybody needs to go to school. I don't have any kids in school, so that's not gonna move me. So I just think that you have to think about a whole audience and think about the fact that if you have a big tent, then you need to move people in the tent and you have to have conversation. There's an overarching message, but there
right,
are things that you need to make sure that you're inspiring and moving. And if
right.
people aren't afraid of living under a dictator, I don't know what's the
That's
matter
what
with you.
it
But if
works,
you don't,
right,
exactly, if you don't know what that's like, I need to help you understand what that's like so that you know that there's something better that you ought to be aspiring for or that you ought to be shooting for. And
Right.
at this point in time, this is where we are going. And no matter who you are, even if you're black, brown, whatever color, you are heading there too, because unless you're a part of the oligarch, at the end of the day, you're going down too because they don't care about you either. But the
Yep.
point is, if we don't shout about that every day and tell people, you might think you're okay, but you're not. If we don't tell people this country has a problem with race, if we don't tell people that we're here because of race and they are, boondoggling you, then how do they know? But they should know that I know. I see
Huh.
you.
And I may have, I'll just say, misquoted Heather Cox Richardson. I would think she was talking about taking a break for
Okay.
the holidays and coming back to it. But I also think that what really stuck with me is the idea, and I think it's so important to articulate our vision for where we want to go and who we want to be. Because I'll say, and if I really recommend everybody in the room and everybody watching that you go back and watch the conversation, and it's called American Undone by Its Own Racism with Professor Eddie Glaude, and then that was with Ali from the Left Hook, because it was really quite astonishing. They did talk all about Harris and what the choice that people did make, because it was right in, like you said, right in front of them that you saw this bigot, this tax cheat, this con man, this sexual abuser. You saw who he was. There was a narcissist. He was cruel, petty, ignorant. He told you everything he was going to be. And then you're talking about the economy wasn't working for you and you had to vote for him because he's a businessman. And I think we call bullshit on that, right? And
Yeah.
once we do, though, I think it's one of these things that we need to confront, like we said, because we will be here again and again. And I go back into time about this because I think about what would have been different if we could transport ourselves back in a time machine? What would we have told people like in the 1880s when Jim Crow was kind of sprouting up in the black codes? Like, I think about this in context of after the Civil War in my own neighborhood, there was a community called Ilda, and free blacks settled there, and it was prosperous, and things were really people were living together very well. And it was like I thought to myself, if they would have just keep evolving, if progress was allowed to proceed, and this dream that we had of our Constitution that said to us the freedom, the liberty, the pursuit of happiness, and everybody deserved this kind of equality, that if we would have kept moving toward that, we weren't perfect. We never have been, but that progress, right? The different world we be in right now, it makes me so sad. Like I think about, because right after that, that community changed within 20 years because of Jim Crow. And we just went backwards, right? Even in that own community, they seized people's lands by eminent domain. That blacksmith, that his business changed. The people that were worshiping together had to walk to another part of town. And we know what happened in the next 60 years till the civil rights revolution happened. And right now, we're not running toward this problem. I feel like we're running away from it. I think our party is not even asking for this, even a civil rights type revolution. I don't see it. So let's, in our end part of the conversation, I like to talk about what we could maybe think about, what could be
Yeah.
really transformative that we should
Yeah.
be pushing.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
wanted to say one thing about the party, what we're transforming to. Our parties, everybody except for Republicans.
Yeah,
Republicans are not afraid to talk about race because they use it as a weapon.
they do.
And we don't talk about race because we're afraid that it's going to run away the people in the middle. And so the people in the middle don't want to talk about
Or-
race. And so
Mhm.
we're afraid that we're not going to talk up, so we won't talk about it. But we need to talk about it because we have friends who are in really rural communities and they are highly offended if you say people vote against their interests. Well, I would never say people vote against their interests because I think that for many of them, not all of them, but for many of them, their interest is preserving their whiteness, preserving their whatever it is that they think that they ought to have. And I think I do have the two books, Dying of Whiteness and White Rage. And I think when you read them, it helps you understand not all people, but some people, because you have to know
Right.
the demons that you're fighting against. And so I think that's important. But I also wanted to just point out in terms of what we should be talking about, in terms of what we can do. we run away from our progress. I was telling you earlier today that when Nikki Haley was running for president against
Right.
Donald Trump for in the primary, that she talked poorly about Trump, but she never ever said a bad word about Trump without saying a bad word about Biden. They were together. So when people were thinking that all of these Nikki Haley voters were going to vote for Biden or come over and vote for Democrats, why would they? Because she never ever said a decent thing about Biden, and she never said anything decent about Trump. But in the end, if you are a Republican, you think, well, why would I vote for Biden? I might as well just stick with my party. And people missed that. And it was a missed opportunity. If you think about today, every single thing that the Trump administration or any of his cabinet of crazy people, whenever they talk about, they blame Biden or Obama. Not a
All the time.
single person ever for every single thing, and not a single person ever says, "No, this is what the Democrats did. We did this." Blah, 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 blah." And my point is that the narrative continues to be negative about Democrats and what
Right.
we do. And
Right.
so those are important things. So if someone was to say to me, "What is one thing that you would want people to do?" I want you to go out to be a proud Democrat. And when people say Democrats suck, you say, "I'm a Democrat. Do I suck?" Here are the things that I believe in. We have to stand up for ourselves. No, we're not the brand, but we are people. And the side that
Right.
we choose to be on is the side that has some moral high ground right now. So I think what I would say to people is don't run away from being a Democrat, which is today a decent party compared to what Republicans
Right.
who are MAGA are, who don't even know that their party doesn't exist anymore, and just school yourself on a couple of the things that you care about in terms of a couple of the things that you care about that Democrats have done for everyone. And that includes rural communities because Joe Biden did more in rural communities than any Republican has ever done. So if I were going to tell people something to take away, I would say, go back and be proud of who you are. You don't have to shout from the ceiling, but you can say, "Oh God, I'd be anything but a Republican today." So we have to start lifting our own selves up, and that would be what I would tell people to do.
Well, I would say too, and I think where we're at, we see some collapse happening, right? With the Trump, obviously, but that doesn't give me any kind of solace. I know we have to keep pushing and fighting, but there is sort of this weight of the hypocrisy that he's talked about because he ran on this whole thing about, the economy, and he's not doing. People aren't seeing their lives improve. So we have a real opportunity, right? But we have to present ourselves as an alternative to this corporate capitalism, this getting money out of politics, and the improvement we have to make is real because the Democratic Party or some people in it, we've been part of this corporate structure. So we have to say, capitalism right now is not working for everybody. In fact, billionaires and rich people, like 400 richest people in America right now, we have to have all the wealth, 400 people. Something is wrong. And we can't walk around and say, hey, this is all this. We just want to take over this system. I think what we see is there has been a moral collapse around the system. Robert Reich talks about this a lot. He's talked about it for 40 years, about the poverty. What we see Trump doing, though, and people are onto it, is a real collapse of being able to deliver for people. So even let's just say that a lot of people were motivated by bigotry, the working class narrative appealed to that. And you sort of have a wake up call that, this system really isn't working. So I think we have to also call that out right now, that the Democratic Party is offering not only a proud Democrat, but we actually have solutions. But like,
Yeah,
talk about Paramount, the TV, CBS, the media, the monopolies on energy, all this stuff is hurting people. If we get power back and we keep that same corrupt system, this system is not working for the working class, or I would just say any damn buddy, call whatever working
yeah,
class.
yeah,
See this, right? We want to lead in this country. We have to call out that Trump is shit on our brand. America no longer is that shining light on the hill. He has done this. And I think Democrats, again, we have to grab the messaging and the narrative of what
yeah,
we do. You want to react to that? What do you think?
yeah. I
Both,
do.
yeah,
I think that all you said is true. But I'm
yeah,
going to go back to this Big Ten again to
get it,
say that we
get
have
it.
to know our audience and know who we're talking to. and there are going to be messages that need to be very specific to different groups of people, because it just all isn't going to resonate. It's just going to go right over their heads. And so I do think that there is this overarching message that we have, but I think that we have to be very definitive about who we're talking to and understand our audience and talk to our audience in ways that they understand. To the person at the door that I knock on, and I'm falling through the stairs when I knock
Right.
on it, they're not going to care about corporate, capitalism. Blah, blah. They
Well,
don't
they
care about
will
that.
if their freaking Cox bill is going up. So we got
They don't have tax, Catherine. They don't
oh,
have any.
they got I got damned Verizon. I'm sorry. What I mean is that
But
okay,
you,
I think you put it where it hits them, from gas to their bills to their energy. That's real people talk. But we can't support the same corporate structure that's not working for anybody, right? That's boring talk, but it's reality that the corporate billionaires are really we this is the problem we have right now with Trumpism is he's feeding the greedy, and we can't do, I mean, that's the thing. We have to differentiate ourselves is what I'm trying to say. Does that make
I
sense?
agree. I
Yeah.
absolutely agree. I think
Right.
what I'm saying is that when we're having the conversation,
Yeah.
it has to be the conversation that matters. There's an overarching message, that race class narrative that will say this is who we are,
Right.
and then we have to get down to the nitty gritty, whether it's at the door, wherever, and talk to the people where we are. But when we're standing up for ourselves, we can't be beating ourselves in the ground and expect people to want to come with us.
Well, let me ask you a question. You had said, and let's talk about what that looks like real quick then, because I want to make sure we understand it, that we need to be bolder and louder. You said there's people that work on the narrative like a not, a not works on this all the time, the race class narrative, but you're not satisfied.
No, I'm not satisfied. So I'm not
We want a
satisfied.
satisfied puffs. We want a satisfied customer. I'm teasing, but yeah, tell us. Let's go there. Then go there.
So in the 2 minutes that we have,
Yeah. Okay.
so,
Three. I'll
so
give you three.
in 2 minutes, I'm not satisfied, because I don't think that it gets to the root cause.
Yeah.
I think that we have to
Okay.
call it what it is. And so when we say, no matter, I'm making this one up, but no
Yeah.
matter your zip code, we all think that kids should deserve the best education. And what I'm getting at is I'm saying that overarching, so that people will say, well, sure, everybody deserves the right education.
Right.
But
Right.
then when it's time to vote, they vote for somebody who doesn't give them the right education. So
Right.
what I'm simply saying is that we have to call it what it is and say, here is why we're not getting the very best. And I don't know what that story sounds like yet, but I know that it calls out the racism in this country and the harm that it has caused. And it lets people who may not have read Dying of Whiteness, or who may not have read White Rage, they just know that they feel some kind of way and someone is pulling them some kind of way. And we have to let people know. It's the same way with propaganda. What did they say? The
Yeah.
best way to fight propaganda is with truth and education and
Right.
knowledge. And so that's what I think is with this whole race thing, that we have to find ways to give people these nuggets of knowledge about race and how it has been used against them to cause them harm.
Because I think right now they're willing to swim in an empty swimming pool. When we
That's
saw,
right.
and that was the book of the Some of It All with Heather McGee, right? It was like, you're willing to, eat this kind of bread that's nothing, that's not going to fill you up, that's going to make you feel better because you're a bigot. So you think some reason, that immigrants are taking your health care. I can't tell you how many times on C-SPAN I hear people call up and say this kind of stuff. And so you're willing to see all that go away and for everybody to suffer. And I think that's when we talk about getting to the reality of it, like, hey, look, everybody can get a good education, everybody deserves it. But these people, they're giving that big, bad, beautiful bill, whatever they called it. They're taking all the money and giving it to
That's
the
right.
rich. So I want to end on it. I just want to say a few things because I thought about this tonight. When we talk about our elections in 2026 and looking for where we need to go, I do think we need bold new leadership. And I do think we talk about the opportunity that we want to make sure that when we're all on the same page, when we get that power, because once we have the power, we can talk about stuff all day long. If we don't get the power, we can't make the change we need. But we need people that are thinking the way we feel like. We don't want people to get in there and say, oh, well, let's go back to the same way. We see some new young leadership coming up. And I would say that I'd like us to think about 2026 is the new bold time that we can talk about what kind of leaders we want. Um, because we have some big work to fix. We got some big things we need to do. So people willing to fight hard, and I think that and fight in a way that's really going to make a difference.
I agree.
All right.
7:31, Catherine.
Oh, I went a minute over, and I want to say that I'm glad people joined us tonight. I see some new people I haven't seen in the room. It's Ruth Ann and Sherry. I see Sherry in the room, but I hope everybody's having a good break. We're going to be doing stuff.
I
You know,
wanted to say hi to my cousin.
oh,
Hi,
who's your?
Peaches. Rosita Jones is my cousin Peaches, so I
Oh,
wanna say
yay!
hi. So
Right.
as we try to build this thing out, so I have to call my family and relatives and say, "I need y'all to support me tonight." So
I know, and I know we're gonna go into the new year. We'll talk next Sunday. But we're trying to really figure out and tackle some big issues that bother us. And I will say to you that the one around racism, is what has got us here. And I do believe that it is where we need to really hammer home. And I agree with you. I agree with you totally because it's been on my mind as well. But all right, and then we're gonna come back live on
yeah.
January with our show.
And I do wanna say thank you. I see lots of new names that I haven't seen
Yeah,
before, and I'm just really grateful for folks who joined to hear what we have to say and what we're thinking about. Because 'cause I'm sure that you guys are thinking about it too, and it does keep me up at night, and I don't want it to keep me up. I want us to figure out how to get it right, and I do think the answers are the people who are on this live listening to us and thinking about what they're thinking about too, and how we can do our part, because that's
yeah,
what we're trying to do, do
our
our
part
part.
our part. We have, and this year is gonna be really, really important for sure because we when we come to the 2026 midterms, we have such an opportunity to really make change. So, tonight we're gonna go eat some pizza with my family. I'm down at the beach, and we'll be continue to work, we'll continue to post, and we'll continue to go live. So, good to see everybody. Have a great night, and, until next Sunday, we'll be live.
Until next Sunday.
Yeah. All right.
Happy New Year. Good night, everybody.
2020. Gotcha.